Hi, I hope you had opportunity to look at my previous um, posts on this YouTube channel regarding Mother's Day and Father's Day, and I hope you weathered them both very well. I promised in a previous post that I would begin to share my story, which I'm going to do tonight. But you need to know that it will go in some increment, so I hope that you will tune in from this point on to catch my whole story. But let me begin tonight by just saying that I've really had a heart for many women and men in our society who have experienced sexual abuse. We hear much more about it today than we did in former years, and really as a result of good things in the media that are educating us and helping us to understand just this really influx of even more abuse. It's been happening forever, since Bible times, but I think due to things in our culture, it's even more pronounced in today's society. But let me begin by telling you a bit of my story tonight. I was the youngest of three girls, and my parents divorced when I was 5 years old. I remember the day that my dad left. I followed him to the car with tears streaming down my face as my dad put his luggage into the car. And I remember thinking in my head, if I'm a good enough little girl, Daddy will come back. But the truth is, I was never really good enough. This picture is somewhat old. I don't know if you can tell, but that is me at 5 years old, probably shortly before my father left. Eventually, my mom ended up remarrying when I was about 8 years old. But I do want to say to you that by God's grace, I had a good relationship and a godly relationship from my mother's parents, and really had a godly heritage from them. My grandpa, who lived to be 100 years old, loved to tell a story about me when I was a little girl. It seems that right around that age of 5 or 6, I think it was. No, actually, I was 7. And my grandmother was kind of a preacher in her own right, and they would often have church services in their home, and my grandmother would be the one who would preach. And so this particular Saturday night, I was spending the night at my grandparents' home, and my grandmother woke up in the morning. They were getting things ready, and usually about 20 people gathered in their small living room. But that morning, my grandmother came to me and said, "Janice, would you like to deliver the message this morning?" And apparently, my grandmother said, I looked up at her very seriously and said, "Yes, but I'll have to prepare." And I picked up Grandma's big black Bible, walked into another room, and I guess was preparing. And in the meantime, about 20 people gathered in my grandmother's living room. What had happened that morning is there was a woman by the name of Mrs. Cannell who had taken ill, and she was the one who was to deliver the message that morning. But since she was ill, that's what prompted my grandmother's questioning of me. So in the meantime, people came, they gathered in her living room, and in a few minutes, I came out and delivered a message. Now, I do not know what that message was. I don't know the text of it. I don't really know. But my grandmother was very proud. And later on that afternoon, Mrs. Cannell called her to see what had happened. And my grandmother said very proudly, "Well, my granddaughter delivered the message this morning. And whatever the text was from the Bible that morning, she conveyed that to Mrs. Cannell, and Mrs. Cannell said, "Oh my goodness, that is the very text that God laid on my heart to share." Now, I don't remember that, and I don't really know what I said, but I knew after that, as my grandmother came to me and grabbed me by the cheeks and said, "Janice, my prayers have been answered. I'm convinced that you will carry on the preaching legacy that I have in this family." Now, at 7 years old, I didn't know what a legacy was, and I didn't know if I could carry it. But I'm here to tell you that God has been very faithful in my life, and I hope you'll tune in for more of the story. See you next time.